Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Sukkah Daf Vav begins with a Mishnah and contains one additional Mishnah. The topic of the first Mishnah is a continuation of the subject we've been discussing up till now, which is what happens when you use wide boards for schach. The Mishnah is actually discussing where you actually want to build a house and use that for your sukkah. The Gemara will analyze the three opinions in the Mishnah and try to compare and contrast them to the previous Mishnah and see how they all play out. Then the next Mishnah gets into the subject of using kalim, using wooden devices as schach, whether you're allowed to use them or not. And it also mentions carving a sukkah out of a haystack. So the first Mishnah begins, let's begin the daf. The first Mishnah begins that if somebody has a room, a regular structured room, and its ceiling is just a wooden board ceiling, it does not have a layer of plaster on it at all. So what is the halacha? Now the standard wooden board ceiling is made out of planks of wood that are wider than 4 tefachim, and we had seen in the previous Mishnah, wider than 4 tefachim has potential problems. So there are two potential problems in this Mishnah, which the Mishnah does not identify, but the Gemara identifies it. Potential problem number one is what's called Gzeras Tikra, that even if this would be kosher schach, even if you put these boards on the ceiling with intent to make a sukkah for schach, it looks very similar to a regular house. And if we allow you to make a sukkah out of this, then you'll end up making a sukkah out of a regular house. That'll be Gzer D'Rabbanan. That would aser anything with boards wider than 4 tefachim. If it was 4 tefachim wide boards or not, it would aser. Now we've seen that Shmuel holds that between 3 and 4 tefachim is also a problem according to certain mandarim. The Gemara will discuss that. Now the other problem with this type of sukkah, where it's literally made out of a ceiling and has ceiling boards, is if it's not made with intent to be used for a sukkah. You built a house, you didn't build a sukkah. So then it wasn't put on l'shem schach, it would have to be re-put on again. So these are the two potential problems. So let's see what the opinions in the Mishnah are. And then we'll discuss how each one is solving which problems. Which problem does he hold of, and how is he solving it? So the Mishnah says as follows. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the halacha of this regular ceiling, this wooden ceiling, without any plaster, is a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. According to Beis Shammai, you have to do two things. You have to, first of all, move the boards around. It means you have to rattle them around so that you're moving them out of place and putting that back into place. So that's being put down l'shem schach, not l'shem ceiling. The second thing you have to do is you have to leave a space. You have to take a space out and fill that space with branches, regular kosher schach. Now the Gemara's understanding is that you'll sit under that space. That is the space where there will be kosher schach, and the other boards will remain pasul schach. They'll just remain the doif and akuma. They'll remain part of the wall. So that's what Beis Shammai says. You have to do both those things. The Gemara will explain where they're coming from. Beis Hillel says you can do either or. Says Rabbi Meir, the only thing you have to do is leave a space. You do not have to shake the schach around. You just have to leave a space, and then you'll sit under that space. So the Gemara first of all analyzes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Again, Rabbi Yehuda had said it's a machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, whether you have to do both solutions or only one. According to Beis Hillel, you could do either solution. Says the Gemara, I understand Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel does not hold of Gzeras Tikra. Beis Hillel holds that there is no problem with the fact that you're sitting under 4 tefach wide boards. He holds that's not so people aren't going to end up thinking that their regular house is a sukkah. His only problem is that you did make l'shem sukkah. So Beis Hillel says there are two solutions. Either you move the boards around, or you leave a space. You take a space out, you take some boards out in the middle, and you put in branches. Either one of those will solve the problem of the fact that you didn't put it up l'shem sukkah. That's why Beis Hillel would hold you could do either or. But what does Beis Shammai hold? Beis Shammai says you have to do both. What would be the logic in doing both of them? Even if Beis Shammai holds that there's a problem of Gzeras Tikra, that you can't sit under the boards, so then that means you have to take some of the boards away. It doesn't help to move them around. Even if you put them down l'shem sukkah, it's a problem. So you have to take some of the boards away. So then what do I need to move them around for? Someone says, you have to reread Beis Shammai. That's what they meant to say. They meant to say, even if you'll rattle the boards around, you still have to take some away. That's what they meant to say. They didn't mean to say you have to do both. They meant to say even if you do one, you still have to do the other. But the main thing you have to do is you have to take some of the boards away and put in branches instead. And that is because they hold of Gzeras Tikra. There's a problem. You cannot sit under schach, which is 4 tefachim wide boards and looks like a regular ceiling. So Gemara says, well, if that's what Beis Shammai holds, that's the same as Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Meir said straight out that's what you have to do. You have to take some boards away. You're telling me that Beis Shammai says the same thing. So the Gemara says, yes, exactly. That's not a problem. Rabbi Meir is saying that there's no machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai on this. Rabbi Meir is saying this is what you have to do. You have to take some boards away, and Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai agree to it. So Rabbi Meir is not saying his own opinion. Rabbi Meir is arguing with Rabbi Yehuda what Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai hold. So again, what comes out? Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir if they have a machlokes or not. According to Rabbi Meir, nobody argues you have to take some of the boards away because there's a problem of Gzeras Tikra. It looks like a regular house. According to Beis Hillel, there's no problem of Gzeras Tikra, and therefore there is a machlokes between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Well, Rabbi Yehuda would say that Gzeras Tikra itself is a machlokes Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda would say Gzeras Tikra itself is a machlokes Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel says there is no Gzeras Tikra, therefore you could either take boards away or you could rattle them around. Beis Shammai says no, you got to take boards away, and that's because they hold of Gzeras Tikra. So the Gemara says, so what comes out of this? Comes out that the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda is there a concept of Gzeras Tikra or not? Rabbi Meir says there is a concept of Gzeras Tikra. Everybody agrees to that. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, only Beis Shammai hold of Gzeras Tikra, which means that Beis Hillel do not. And halachically, therefore, Rabbi Yehuda would be saying there is no problem of Gzeras Tikra. So the Gemara says this fits very beautifully in our previous Mishnah, where clearly Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda argued straight out: are you allowed to sit under schach, which is more than normal boards? Are you allowed to sit under boards of schach? As a matter of fact, it's a repetition of that. The previous Mishnah explicitly stated this machlokes. Rabbi Meir says there is a problem of Gzeras Tikra. You can't sit under boards of schach. And Rabbi Yehuda said you can. So why do we need to repeat it? So the Gemara tries two solutions for why it's repeated here. The Gemara's first solution is here, really we're not talking about Gzeras Tikra altogether. We're talking about a different type of Gzera. These boards are less than 4 tefachim wide. It's not a Gzeras Tikra. It's something called Gzeras Kalim. These boards are very nicely finished and smooth and sloped and can even be used as a kli. And the question is, are you allowed to use something which looks like a kli, or could be useful as a kli? It's not a finished kli. It has no base kibul. It's not makabel tumah, but it looks like a kli. Are you allowed to use something like that for your schach or not? And that's this machlokes over here between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says, oh, Beis Shammai would say that's a problem, therefore you have to take some away. And Rabbi Meir says, no, everybody agrees that that's a problem, and therefore everybody agrees you have to take some away. Beis Hillel doesn't argue and say you just have to shift them around. So Gemara says that only works according to the Amoira that holds that we do make a gzeira, or something that looks like a kli, is very similar to a kli. They can't use it for schach. But in previous daf we had the opinion of Rabbi Chia bar Abba, name of Rabbi Yechanan, who said when you have the shafts of arrows, so he said that shafts of arrows sometimes are a kli and sometimes are not a kli. How is that? Depends how you attach the arrowhead to the shaft. If the arrowhead has a peg and the shaft has a hole, so then the wooden shaft has a base kibul, so then it's a kli. If it's the shaft has the peg and the arrowhead has the hole, so then the shaft does not have a hole, so it's not a base kibul. So if it has a base kibul, it's possible because it's a kli. If it doesn't, because it's a kli, it's makabel tumah. And if it does not have a base kibul, then it doesn't have a hole, so then it's kosher. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba and then Rabbi Yechanan said, you don't make a gzeira one to the other. You don't say you'll confuse the two, and therefore you should ask them both hamid rabbanan. So therefore, it cannot be that the explanation of this brisa, of this Mishnah here, is based on the idea that you make a gzeira from something which looks like a kli, and you aser any piece of wood, even if it doesn't have a base kibul, because it looks like a kli. He clearly holds that you don't make such an iser. So you're not going to be able to answer according to him. So the Gemara says, okay, so I'll give you a different answer, and that's that this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah are really one Mishnah. It's the Reisha and the Seifa, it's the first and second half of the same Mishnah. That's part of the same conversation. In the previous Mishnah, we introduced the Machlokes. Rabbi Meir says there is a problem of Gzeras Tikra. You can never sit under boards. Boards can't be schach. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, boards could be schach. There's no Gzeras Tikra. Then Rabbi Yehuda went and he introduced this Machlokes Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, and he said, you see, Beis Shammai holds of Gzeras Tikra, your svara, your argument that you can't sit on the board, that's Beis Shammai's opinion. That's why Beis Shammai says you have to take some of the boards away from the ceiling. But Beis Hillel says just shift them around and it's okay. So you see, I'm right. Beis Hillel goes like me. And on that, in our Mishnah here, Rabbi Meir answered and he says, no, that was not the machlokes. Everybody agrees you just have to take some away. There is no possibility to kasher it by shifting boards around. Okay, now we fully explained the Mishnah. The Gemara just wants to know, how does this fit in the opinion of Rav and how does it fit in the opinion of Shmuel? Rav and Shmuel had a machlokes on the previous daf. Where is Gzeras Tikra? Those who hold of Gzeras Tikra, is that in boards between 3 and 4 tvachim wide, but if it's wider than 4 tvachim, all Tanaim aseret, they all hold of Gzeras Tikra there, even Rabbi Yehuda. Or is the machlokes in any size boards greater than 4, but less than 4, everybody holds it's kosher. Now this Mishnah here doesn't say sizes, but it talks about a standard ceiling. Standard ceiling has boards that are more than 4 tvachim wide. That would seem to indicate, like Rav, we're talking here about boards that are more than 4 tvachim wide, and we have machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Is the Gzeras Tikra or not? So Gemara says, Shmuel will have to explain it as follows. Shmuel will have to say that here we're talking about where the roof pre-existed and somebody's trying to turn the roof into a sukkah. There, even when the boards are more than 4, the machlokes does apply. Meaning, Shmuel said earlier that the machlokes of Gzeras Tikra only applies between 3 tvachim wide boards to 4 tvachim wide boards. That's when you're building a sukkah. And the question was, and you're building a sukkah l'shem sukkah. And the question was, should we let you build a sukkah like that? Or are people going to get confused and end up sitting in their regular house because it looks just like a house? But here, you're taking a house and you're turning it into a sukkah. You're clearly showing, you very clearly know the halachas that wide boards are not a problem. You're doing an action, you're shifting the boards around, you're fooling around with it in order to turn it from a house to a sukkah. So you're not getting confused between a house and a sukkah, you're coming to change a house into a sukkah. So maybe there we don't make gzeira. And that would be the machlokes. Here, in this situation, there's a machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir. Do we still have gzeira sticker in this case or not? Normally, if the boards are more than 4 tvachim wide, both of them agree there is gzeira tikra. Here, we're talking about changing a house into a sukkah. There's more of a reason to say that there's no gzeira tikra because the guy's clearly demonstrating that he knows the difference between a house and a sukkah. Okay, this concludes the Gemara's discussion on this Mishnah. Now we get to our next Mishnah, which talks about if you want to use wooden kalim that don't have a base kibul, if you want to use them for the schach, and the Gemara and the Mishnah clearly says that a kli is pasul. Talks about 2 types of wooden kalim or pieces of wooden kalim. One is where you have spits, that's roasting spits, wooden roasting spits, that's a kli. And the other one is if you have a piece of the bed, you have a stick from the bed frame. So it says that if you use those, so it's not good schach, but if you have a couple of them to hold up the schach, so you need to have space between them, and the space between them has to be equal to the width of these pasul schach themselves. They could be holding up the schach, but it can't be that they are more than the schach themselves. If it's equal, 50-50, then it's kosher. Now, the Mishnah adds, if somebody who hollows out a room in a haystack and has hay on top and hay on all 4 sides, that's not a kosher sukkah, that's a pasul sukkah. So the Gemara begins by analyzing the fact that we said that if there are spaces that are equal to the pasul schach, it's a kosher. 50-50 is okay. The Gemara says this is very similar to a conversation in which we had in Masechah Shabbos. Masechah Shabbos, we talked about a wall that's made of sticks that are spaced apart from each other. And over there we said that if the spaces are exactly equal to the built part, I mean if you had ribs, and the constructed slats are exactly the width of the spaces. There we said it was a machlokes between Rav Papa and Rabbi Shua, and Rabbi Shua over there said you have to asr it, you have to consider it like it is majority the usr material. Over there the spaces are the isr, here the spaces are the heter, but either way you have to consider like it's the majority of the part you don't want. You can't, 50-50 is no good, it has to be at least majority structure, and over there it would have to be that it has to be, and here where we want spaces it would have to be at least majority spaces. So it's a kasha on Rav Yeshua who says 50-50 is no good. So Gemara says no. So here it's not exactly 50-50. Here when we say that they're equal spaces, we mean spaces where you're going to fill in schach branches, and you have this, that the schach branches are equal width to the pasul schach, and you can slide them in and out, which means that there's obviously a little bit more space than there is pasul schach. Is a little bit more. So the Gemara understood that when we answered that, what we meant to say is that we didn't make it exactly 50%. We meant slightly more than 50%. So the Gemara asks, but after L'tzamtzem, you could make it exact, and the Mishnah doesn't say that you have to make it not exact. The Gemara says, yeah, that's what we mean to say. We mean to say that it's not exact, that you left spaces where referring to where you left a little bit more space. The Gemara gives another answer. The Gemara says not just that you left a little bit more space than width. It could be that you put the branches, the kosher schach, which you put crosswise. You put perpendicular to these slats. These kalim, which are holding up the schach, have to be perpendicular to the schach that they're holding up. Since they're holding up schach, so there's more kosher schach than pasul schach, and therefore it is kosher, it's okay. So now the Gemara notes that one of the kelim we mentioned here was a piece of a bed frame. The Gemara said it's the long side of the bed frame. The frame of the bed is just a rectangle made out of 4 wooden slats, 2 long and 2 short. The Mishnah had said one of the long ones. But you see here that a piece of a broken kli counts as a kli, because this bed frame, the wooden stick, is not useful as anything. It's just a wooden beam. But because it came from a bed frame, we consider it a kli, and therefore you can't use it for schach. So Gemara says that seems to support the opinion of Rav Ami bar Tavyumi, who says if you take a piece of a kli, it has the same halacha as the kli, even though now it's not makabel tumah, now it's not useful anymore, since it comes from a kli that's makabel tumah, therefore it cannot be schach anymore. So Gemara says no, we had an adjustment to Rav Ami bar Tavyumi before, where we said that we were referring to a case where you have a bed frame, you have a long piece and a short piece and 2 feet, and that is useful as a bed, so that's what we're referring to over here. And that's what used as the schach. It's a piece of a bed frame, but it's enough of a piece that you could still use it. Somewhere quotes that statement of Rav Chanan in the name of Rebbe. It's on a Mishnah. The Mishnah is discussing pieces of a bed frame, how they become tamei and how they become tahar in a mikvah. And it says that the Tanna Kama holds that it only becomes tamei as one piece. The entire bed frame has to be whole to be makabel tumah, and it has to be put in the mikvah whole. And that was the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. The Chachamim said, no, you could break it up into pieces. It could become tamei in pieces, and it could go into the mikvah in pieces. The Gemara asked, in pieces, how could it become tamei in pieces? It's not a kli. And Rav Chanan there had answered, it's talking about where you have one side of the bed frame, one short stick, one long stick, and 2 legs, and that's useful. The Gemara says, what's that useful for? It's a piece of a bed frame, but how is it useful? The Gemara says you could lean it against the wall, you could prop it up against the wall, and then you could use it to lie on, and it functions as a bed.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.